It is just a normal day on Earth, with the globe making its way around its axis as usual, when something suddenly strikes it from outer space, causing quite the impact, and then the alerts start blaring like crazy on phones and in the streets, warning people about the invasion of the strongest species, extraterrestrial life forms, or as people commonly know them, aliens, and advising people in the surrounding area to evacuate to shelters. It keeps blaring and warning, and the people on the ground stop whatever they're doing and watch in fear as a mighty dragon-like alien reveals itself and starts terrorizing their city and causing mass destruction everywhere. This mighty creature now stands before a young boy, looking as fierce and intimidating as ever. But this young man isn't moved, and his name is Kurobo-Higui, a brave hero who declares that he will never lose to a monster, even though it's 100 times his size. Kurobo-Higui has always had a stubborn pride ever since he was born, and on this very day he gets eaten without a second thought, along with that pride of his, making a wonderful snack for the dragon alien. A quick backstory. 10 years ago, a massive swarm of extraterrestrial life forms known as EVA arrived from space in thousands, and they didn't hesitate to make themselves at home on the planet, causing mass destruction and inflicting terror, and human weapons proved completely ineffective against them, so basically humanity was toast, and it seemed like there was no hope. Just then, all of humanity awakened to their alpha abilities, ironically enough due to the cosmic substance star element scattered by the very same creatures that were causing them terror, and it gave them the power to fight against these monsters with superhuman gifts, and that's how the counter began. Back to the present, earlier that same day, students arrive at the 8th Special Forces Training School, which is the country's top training academy aimed at fostering children 15 and older with exceptional alpha abilities to raise them into an unbeatable fighting force. Young Kurobo-Higui is also a student here, well, at least he wishes to be, because in truth he is actually just the part-time janitor in charge of picking garbage and stuff. The bully who reminded him of this cruel reality by throwing trash on him proceeds to pick on him even more. Humanity ranks individuals based on their alpha levels, F rank and E rank being the lowest and regarded as normal civilians, then D rank up to A rank as special soldiers, and then S rank is the most powerful and the smallest of the entire population. This system is specifically designed to quickly respond to EVAs, and amidst all that, Kurobo-Higui is the only human on Earth who hasn't awakened any alpha abilities, so technically he is not recognized even at the lowest rank, which is F rank, and cannot attend school since he is rankless. But that doesn't mean he is some loser who takes bullying without ever fighting back. He picks up the trash and tells the bully to clean it up like he should, no matter his rank, but that ultimately leads to some intense beating and whooping that leaves him half-conscious and still with the trash. The bully then picks Kurobo-Higui up and makes it as clear as he possibly can never to order someone like him who is in A rank, especially considering that Kurobo-Higui is nothing but some unranked trash. The bully then takes it a bit further and activates his Flame Alpha ability in an attempt to burn it into Kurobo-Higui's thick skull, but before he can get any damage in, the flame completely freezes in his hands. The bully immediately turns around to see a fine young lady talking down to him for using his abilities against powerless citizens instead of saving it for the EVAs. The girl who put out his flames in an instant is known as Hyuga Orion, an S rank that is also known as the Ice Wall Witch, who is a first year at the school and a promising elite. The bully reluctantly lets Kurobo-Higui go, even though he clearly doesn't have much of a choice, and leaves, and then the kind Hyuga Orion picks up the trash and hands it to Kurobo-Higui, scolding him for defying someone of a much higher rank, and reminding him that the rules technically don't ban high-ranked individuals from eliminating those of the lower rank if they see fit. Kurobo-Higui thanks her for picking it up, but doesn't seem to heed a word she just said, because he strongly believes that a person's worth is determined purely by their actions, not by their rank or abilities. With a cheer that's not expected of someone who just had his behind handed to him by a bully, Kurobo-Higui goes off to continue his cleaning, and Hyuga Orion is left completely stunned at his attitude as she watches the boy go on his merry way. 8 years ago, Kurobo-Higui's mom found him crying again in the field, and he complained to her that everyone was making fun of him for not having an ability, so she assured him that it was okay to have no power, as a person's worth is not determined by what they have, but by what they do. And with the warmest smile, she tells him that all he has to do is find a way to be useful to someone, and that would be enough. It took a minute, but young Kurobo-Higui understood the assignment and promised to do as she said. Then after a while, his mom fell really ill and had to be hospitalized, and the doctor informed him that his poor mom's body couldn't withstand her own alpha ability, and there was no cure for it. Just then, he overheard some nurses gossiping about them and mocking them for not having abilities. He never understood what was so hot about abilities or ranks, and swore to never allow those petty things to define his or his mom's worth, because it can only be defined by what they do. Back to the present, Kurobo goes on a cleaning spree and diligently mops the floors, wipes the windows, and washes the toilet. And before noon, he has already finished a day's work, so he is pretty proud of himself. Everywhere is spotless, so he decides to continue with the pace and go clean the outside as well. As he is cleaning outside, he witnesses a class undergoing some practical training and decides to watch a bit with admiration. Today, the instructor has brought in a group of EVAs, all of which are C-ranked, and he announces that the students are to defeat one each all under 1 minute, since the students are already B rank or higher. The training session begins, and the EVAs are released, so Yuga Orion uses her ice abilities and the bully uses his firepower to KO their respective EVAs in an instant. Everyone is impressed by this, but of course they'd expect nothing less from two very high-ranking students, and Kurobo can only admire them from afar and say nothing. But then he gets back to his senses and realizes that he has gotten distracted for a bit there, so he goes on to throw the trash. At that exact moment, the strongest species land on Earth from whatever planet they came from, causing a huge impact as they land. Then the alarms start going crazy, alerting folks around of an EVA attack happening extremely close to the school and ordering C-rank or higher folks to help intercept. The monster appears right next to Kurobo and he can only stare in fear. Panic ensues as the strongest species approach the students of the school, making the once proud students run and scream for their mommy. The only one who doesn't immediately bolt in the opposite direction is Yuga Orion, who still believes that as top rankers they should at least stay and try to fight. But then one unfortunate student who is not so fast on his feet gets eaten and becomes a monster snack in an instant. That shatters what's left of Yuga Orion's courage, as she realizes that this EVA actually likes devouring humans. The monster then opens its mouth, and another mouth comes out of it like some kind of freaky mutated creature as it prepares to gobble down the girl as well, and Yuga Orion is stricken with fear so she can't find the strength to run away, so she's basically done for. But then Kurobo steps in and throws the trash bag of leaves he has on him at the monster in an attempt to distract it and buy him a few seconds. In those precious few seconds, he immediately picks up a shocked Yuga Orion and piggybacks her, then makes a quick run for it while the EVA still tries to shake off the leaves and recover its visibility. Kurobo then has the bright idea to hide in the sewers, and since he normally cleans them regularly, he has already memorized the entire layout, so they get in. Then the EVA finally catches up to them, but they're already in the sewers, so it just stares at them since it obviously can't follow them in. As Kurobo gives Yuga Orion a free piggyback ride inside the sewers in the race for their lives, she wonders why a lowly janitor would risk his life so much just for her, especially without any alpha abilities to speak of. But he reminds her of his life motto, which is the fact that you don't need an alpha ability to help people. You just need to do what you can do. She then warmly thanks him for saving her, although they're not out of the woods yet as they still need to go through these sewers and get to the shelter entrance. They pop out from the sewers just in front of the entrance to the emergency shelter like Kurobo had planned, and they make it just in time as the door is about to close since the building is full of people already. He begs the people to let him and Yuga Orion in, but the scumbag students in the shelter refuse his request, claiming that there isn't any space left for them since even the surrounding citizens had rushed in as well. Just then, one of the students recognizes Yuga Orion as the S-rank top student and orders that space be made for her no matter what, and this is a huge relief for Kurobo and Yuga Orion as they think they're both saved now. But then the students only mean that there's space for Yuga Orion, and they push Kurobo away. They recognize him as the rankless trash they saw around the school sometimes, and they don't have space for him because he is not a priority, as he will serve absolutely no use to them in the slightest. Yuga Orion immediately rushes to his defense and informs them that he saved her just now, and then proceeds to give up her spot if it means that he will have a chance to be saved as well. She then orders him to get in that shelter and uses her authority as a high-ranking individual to try and force him in. Just then, they feel the impact of the EVA getting near, which means that time has run out to make their decision. So the scumbags start closing the door to the shelter, and at the very last second, Kurobo makes a very brave decision and pushes Yuga Orion through the door. This shocks her, but he meant it when he said that one's alpha ability or ranking doesn't matter, only their actions. So now he's choosing to do the best he can, and even though he is this close to peeing his pants, He lets out a brave smile, but with fearful tears in his eyes, as he watches the only chance he has of surviving this situation slowly close shut before his very eyes. Now that his only shot out of this hell of a fate has sailed, Kurobohi Gui turns to face the consequences of his actions, which is to confront the terrifyingly huge EVA monster in front of him. And even though he is scared as hell, he is also brave enough to keep on standing his ground because he has just always been that stubborn ever since he was born. This time, his enemy is a monster that even the top rankers ran away from like scared rats, but he doesn't plan on going down without putting up a fight. He grabs a steel metal pipe and rushes straight for the EVA, because deep down he knows he doesn't have an alpha ability, but he can't lose his pride too. Before he can even finish that thought, the EVA easily gobbles him up, ending the battle in an instant before it even starts. As he is being torn apart and chewed like a tasty meat snack, he reckons that dying while saving people is not too bad of a way to sign out, especially for someone like himself. But in between the jaws of the beast, he realizes that all that crap he said was actually a huge lie. He realizes that in truth he had always wanted an alpha ability, and he hates being picked on and laughed at, and he really wanted to stick it to them. But it is all too late for that now. As he lays in the EVA's belly in pieces, all he can do is wallow in regret and tears and apologize to his mom for not being strong enough to have any real impact on the world like she wanted him to. Just then the system activates and reveals that the activation conditions for Kurobohi Gui's alpha ability, which is his death, have been met, so the apex predator black hole is activated and a literal black hole is formed. Naturally, it starts consuming everything inside the EVA's stomach, and the monster starts to notice that its belly is being eaten from the inside out. Just then, things get very painful for it as the consumption rate increases and major holes start forming on its belly. Then a big hole that is sucking it in from the inside out appears, and the consumption rate keeps increasing until it reaches 90% and has sucked in the once feared most powerful species like it was nothing. Once the consumption rate reaches 100%, it enters the decomposition and reconstitution phase, and a huge black ball forms. After a while, the ball cracks and splits open, releasing a lot of steam. Out of the steam comes a clothless Kurobohi Gui, completely stitched back together and healed, although his clothes didn't heal with him. He has absolutely no idea what just happened, because all he remembers is being eaten whole by the strongest species, and that bothers him, but what bothers him more is his angry stomach, because he is really hungry. The system then informs him that he has successfully consumed the strongest species EVA, and that he can now use its unique alpha ability, and then proceeds to ask him if he would like to use it. Kurobohi Gui sure is hungry, but before he can do anything about it, he faints and falls from the ball he was standing on, but then there's still a little bit of the black hole left on his palm, and it's still very much active. It swallows the big black ball that Kurobohi Gui was standing on, making it seem like there was nothing there in the first place. Kurobohi Gui wakes up to a ringing voice in his head, yelling at him to return its body, and once he opens his eyes, he is shocked to see the greatest species EVA just standing right in front of him, demanding that he return its body, and then it uses its tongue to kick him out. That's when Kurobohi Gui actually wakes up in the real world and in a hospital. He is first met with confusion, as apart from the strange dream he just had, being eaten alive is the last memory he has, so he is shocked to still be alive. Just then he notices the mini black hole on his hand, which only adds more to his already growing pile of questions. Then something shoots out of it like a rocket, a ghost-like creature that immediately starts yelling and yapping, demanding that he return its body. Kurobohi has no idea what he is looking at, and it really pisses the ghost thingy off that he doesn't recognize it, even though it still clearly has its markings, magnificent horns, and fangs that can tear through anything. It then proudly reveals that it is actually the strongest species, one of the many powerful aliens that invaded Earth, now in cute size. Remembering how terrifying the strongest species actually looked, Kurobohi Gui refuses to believe that the ghost plushie is really what it claims to be, so it points out that it still has the exact same patterns, which Kurobohi Gui admits are the same as the monsters, but he still can't bring himself to believe that it's the same creature. Sensing that he isn't really buying its story, the creature decides to bestow upon him the honor of knowing its actual name because the strongest species is kind of a mouthful, but then it realizes that it can't remember its name for some reason, which is quite strange. Just then, our MC truly wakes and chooses violence as he starts beating and strangling the creature, because if it is truly the strongest species like it's claiming to be, that would mean that it is responsible for all the chaos and all the students' lives that were lost that day, so he is going to start avenging them this very moment by making it pay with its life. But then the EVA ghost informs him that he has actually already devoured it, a memory that Kurobo obviously doesn't have. To prove it, the Eva ghost proceeds to inform him that his body is now actually made from its body, and now he reeks of Eva. It explains that it thought it devoured Kurobo back then, but it was the other way around, and he was actually the one who made a good snack of the greatest species, devouring it from the inside. This would explain why the once feared greatest species is now reduced to this cute ghost thingy that is shooting out from the black hole on his palm. And as a bonus, it can also understand human language. Kurobo is shocked to find out that his body is actually made from an EVAs, but the ghost plushie didn't stutter when it said it. Just then they hear a knock on the door, and the unlikely duo begin to panic as they know it would be bad if someone walks in on him talking to some creature sprouting from his hand, so he hides it behind his back. Hyuga Orion drops her book in shock when she walks in and sees her savior awake, and she breaks into tears of joy, grateful that he finally regained consciousness. He recognizes her as just a student from the academy, so she introduces herself, and our casual Kurobo immediately gets on a first-name basis with her, which surprises her. But more importantly, she reminds him of the recklessness he displayed on that day and starts nagging him about not following her orders, then warns him never to disobey her like that again. Kurobo doesn't get why she's so mad. After all, he was just doing all that he could do to help in a dire situation like that. The air temperature drops out of nowhere, and suddenly it feels like our MC is standing clothless in the middle of the North Pole, and all this is because of the dangerous ice-cold aura now oozing from Hyuga Orion as she proceeds to ask him about what exactly happened that day, what happened to the monster, and how exactly he was able to survive. Her tearful smile is long gone, and what takes its place is an emotionless, serious look as she informs him that since he likes to do a lot, telling the truth is what he can do for all of humanity's sake at the moment. She reveals to him that he has actually been out cold for a full week since the incident happened, and then she turns on the TV to show him the current state of the world. The news reveals that the investigation of the mysterious disappearance of the strongest species is still ongoing, and during the attack, there was radio interference and all cameras were destroyed in the process, so there is no footage, record, or proof of anything that happened that day, only a testimony from an eyewitness that revealed that there was actually a boy present at the scene. And that is all the information they have. Kurobo is shocked as he realizes that he is the mysterious boy they're talking about on the news, and Hyuga Orion confirms it, then demands that he tell her what exactly happened that day. The strongest species is an EVA, with the potential to toast all of humanity if it so pleases, so it has to be found at all costs. And for that reason, she came to question him personally as an S rank. She reminds him of the fact that she has the permission to use force if she has to, in an attempt to intimidate him. Kurobo starts to seriously consider his position in all this and admits that he doesn't remember all the details, but proceeds to start telling her all that he does know. Just before he can start his story, he hears the ringing voice of the strongest species in his head, warning him not to snitch and causing him a huge headache, so much so that Hyuga Orion has to ask if he's okay. The strongest species warns him that if he tells on them, the humans would eliminate him immediately, and he takes a minute to consider this new perspective, and actually agrees with the Eva, which brings it relief. But our righteous hero still doesn't believe in lying, so he yanks the creature out of hiding and exposes it to Hyuga Orion. Then he spills the beans, the entire pot in fact. He tells her about how he devoured the strongest species. Kurobo revealed everything that happened and even showed Hyuga Orion proof by exposing the strongest species Eva that is stuck to his hand, and she is shocked, but not because of his revelation. In fact, quite the opposite. She is surprised because he made all that noise, but she can't see anything on his arm that's out of the ordinary, and it is then that he realizes that other people can't see the Eva or the mark on his arm, and they can't hear its voice either. Hyuga Orion still wants her answers though, and she's ready to use all means necessary to get them from him, and just at that moment, an Eva starts hovering over the building right outside, and the greatest species notices it immediately. Hyuga Orion is still nagging him for answers Kurobo already gave her, and his Eva ghost tells him to get out of the room as soon as possible, which confuses him, but there's not enough time for a proper explanation. Just then, the Eva monster breaks into the room, so it's a little late for that idea, and it totally catches them off guard. Hyuga Orion immediately takes action and uses her ice powers to create a shield to block them from an incoming physical attack from the monster, and they are frightened to see that an Eva had suddenly confronted them out of nowhere and unprovoked. Kurobo can't figure out what it's doing here or why it came, and the strongest species keeps yelling at him to get out of the building as soon as possible because the Eva they're dealing with is way stronger than Miss S rank over there. It explains that the Eva must have caught a whiff of its scent and came rushing over, which doesn't really explain the situation at all. So the plushie reveals that it has beaten most of the Evas that are on this planet before it even came here, and now that one of them has noticed that it is in a weakened state, It has come to have its revenge and devour the strongest species, which is basically our MC, since he technically now has the body of the strongest species. It is now that Kurobo realizes how deep in trouble they actually are, and the pressure the EVA puts on Hyuga Orin's ice shield increases, cracking it, which shocks her because this ability can normally withstand the attacks of S-rank EVAs, but this one is obviously beyond that level, so it breaks through her shield quite easily. Knowing that the EVA is only after him, Kurobo plays the hero once again and pushes Hyuga Orin to run away while he distracts it, but she is sick of playing the role of the damsel in distress in this story, because she is an S-rank individual who doesn't appreciate being underestimated. She shoots ice shards, and her attack actually connects with the monster for the first time, which gives her a little confidence, but in an instant, the ice shards totally disappear from the EVA's body, and Hyuga Orin realizes that it easily melted her ice using its body heat, so it handled her attacks without even having to dodge or deflect. The EVA decides that it's about time it gave an attack of its own, and begins to charge up a mighty blast in its mouth, which Hyuga Orin detects. So she orders Kurobo to get behind her while she gets in position to try her ice shield again, and the greatest species advises him to use the distraction the human girl is creating to escape. But of course, our MC has other plans and goes off to do his own thing. He shoulder slams the monster to draw its attention, quite a stone's throw from what the girl and the EVA ghost told him to do, and Hyuga Orin reminds him that he doesn't have an alpha ability, but Kurobo tells her that he is only doing what he can. If this big overgrown bird really wants a piece of him that badly, then who is he to deny it the honor of being its opponent? Kurobo sounds really confident, but just like before, it is all bark and no bite, as he doesn't really know what to do next now that he has drawn its attention. But then he spots a tree outside and figures that if he can jump over there, then he can draw the EVA monster away from any people. The strongest species informs him that there's no way he can make that jump because that tree is hundreds of meters away from the building, and Kurobo is well aware of this, but he doesn't really have much of a choice now because it's a do-or-die situation. So he grips his knuckles, uses all his strength, and leaps off the window, and he doesn't just jump. In fact, he soars through the air and realizes that he is actually flying, not falling. One moment he is in the hospital room, the next he is hundreds of feet in the air, which feels incredible at the moment, but he has no idea how to get down, and as if that thought suddenly turned off the flight switch, he immediately starts falling down quickly. As the ground draws nearer, the greatest species tells him to shut his whining and focus on his landing instead, and he does just that and manages to land with his 2 feet, creating a huge impact. A fall like that should, on normal occasions, hurt like hell, but he oddly feels perfectly fine. Kurobo cannot understand why he is without even a scratch, even though he literally fell from the sky. So the greatest species informs him that it lent him its power, which would explain the superhuman athleticism he just displayed. Just then, the EVA monster catches up to them, which reminds them of why they jumped out of the building in the first place, to draw it away from people. They immediately make a run from it, but the EVA monster is hot on their trail and not giving them a chance to escape. The greatest species then tells Kurobo to hand over his body to it if he really wants to defeat that thing. The EVA monster is about to make everyone here its breakfast and obliterate everything else in sight. So if Kurobo doesn't want that to happen, he has to decide whether to trust the greatest species with his body, and the thing has one heck of a sinister look on its face. The EVA monster is chasing Kurobo down, and he has to decide whether to trust another monster with his body, or allow everybody around him to meet a sudden end. He wants to know what exactly the monster ghost means by this, and it tells him that it is exactly what he thinks it means. It feels like it can use his body, and it knows this because of how it lent him its power during that jump. If not, Kurobo would be nothing but a stain on the floor. The EVA monster is now gaining on them, so the greatest species urges Kurobo to give in and hand his body over so it can take the steering wheel. Kurobo takes a trip down memory lane as he considers his options, remembering all the horror and death that the strongest species brought upon while it was still in its original form, and with that, he absolutely refuses to hand over his body to such a dangerous creature, especially since its reputation is nothing to write home about. The EVA monster then fires a flame blast attack that Kurobo manages to dodge but only by a hair, and the greatest species reveals that the EVA monster is well aware that Kurobo is actually the greatest species' body, and that the level of flame it's attacking them with isn't nearly enough to completely eliminate the greatest species. Just then, they are distracted by a female scream and realize that they are approaching someone who didn't evacuate in time, and she is injured and can't walk on her own, talk less of running away. The EVA monster immediately goes for her and ignores Kurobo entirely, and he blames himself for getting distracted and tries to get the EVA monster's attention back on him. But the greatest species is not on board with that plan and urges him to hand over his body instead, but our MC just ignores its yapping. Kurobohigui reckons that if his body is truly made out of the strongest species, then he is not totally defenseless in this situation. So he uses all his might and channels it into a punch that he launches at the EVA monster, and that earns him negative aura marks as it does absolutely nothing to the monster, not even an ounce of damage. Kurobohigui is shocked at this and wonders why it didn't work, so the greatest species reminds him that it needs to lend him the power for him to be able to use it like before, which means he needs its permission to be super again, and without it, he is just a regular old human. The EVA monster prepares to attack them again, and they don't think it intends on missing its target a second time, so the greatest species asks Kurobohigui one last time to hand his body over to it, and it tells him to hurry up because the monster will soon obliterate them along with the entire hospital and everyone else in it. Kurobohigui gets tired of this freak's yapping and shuts it up, then reminds it that this is all its fault in the first place for bringing the EVA monster here, so if anybody is going to give up anything, it should be the greatest species, and it is only fair that it is the one to give up its power. Just then, the monster fires the flame attack, and it heads straight for them like a shooting comet, and the greatest species starts to seriously panic. Kurobohigui reveals to it that this is really all he can do at the moment, and if it keeps refusing to lend him its power, then they'd all be toast in seconds. But he is not afraid of dying, especially since he has already been through it. So it is really nothing too special. But the greatest species is absolutely terrified of the idea of being obliterated out of existence, so it takes his right arm, where the marking is, and fearfully dives into it while trembling until it is swallowed whole, but not before informing him that this is a one-time deal. When it has been completely absorbed, Kurobohigui starts detecting power swelling up from the pit of his stomach, and decides to launch it upwards so it doesn't hit the people or the hospital. The system calculates that he is releasing limited energy from the consumed strongest species at a release rate of 0.0001%. He launches the power upward like he planned to do, and the EVA monster tries to counter with its flame attack, so the two opposing powers collide, and it becomes a struggle. Kurobohigui is being pushed back by the force of the monster's attack, so he asks the greatest species inside of him if it really wants to die together that badly in an attempt to motivate it. And it works because the creature puts in more effort, and their power overcomes that of the EVA monster and soon overwhelms it, leading to its elimination. The girl they saved can only watch in awe as they completely one-shot the bird freak monster EVA out of existence, and all that is left is a huge corpse. The system then detects that the limited release has ended and automatically switches back to normal mode. Kurobohigui is astonished by how he just took out that huge alien with just one hit, and he realizes that the power of the strongest species really is no joke at all. But after that, his eyelids get heavy, and he passes out on the ground. It is then that Hyuga Orion arrives at the scene to help Kurobohigui, but she's quite late to the party as the battle has already ended. Then she spots him lying unconsciously next to the corpse of the giant EVA monster that even she couldn't handle and nearly toasted the both of them. She cannot even understand what is actually going on anymore and cannot bring herself to believe that the boy who is peacefully catching some Z's is the one responsible for all this. Once again, Kurobohi wakes up in a strange place, very different from the location where he fell unconscious, and this time he is sitting in a weird building that has an oddly nice smell, but it's not coming from the building, but from the fine tea that a majestic gentleman is pouring out for him to drink as they get started with their conversation. Kurobohigui has no idea where he is or who the nice gentleman serving him some nice-smelling tea is either, so the man apologizes for not explaining himself earlier. He explains that Kurobohigui was in critical condition after defeating the alien life form that attacked the hospital, so they took him into their care. He then reveals that they are currently at the Hachi School's underground training facility, which also serves as a shelter for VIPs during EVA attacks, and it boasts humanity's strongest infrastructure, being able to withstand attacks from both inside and outside. He finally introduces himself as Niseki Ryogen, an S-ranker, the commander of the 8 Special Forces, and the principal of the 8 Special Forces Training School. Kurobohigui immediately recognizes the man, as he remembers that he is the one who defeated the first strongest species that attacked the country 8 years ago, the one who holds the title of the country's strongest special soldier. Niseki Ryogen also adds that he is technically Kurobohigui's boss at the high school, where he works as a janitor, so he advises him not to address him so casually. The EVA Ghost, on the other hand, recognizes that this Nisiki Ryogen dude is no joke and reckons that it should lay low for the time being, knowing that it doesn't stand a chance against him as it is now. Kurobohi Gui then asks why they are in such a high-class underground facility, and taking a look around for the first time since he woke, he sees that Hyuga Orin is also at the table and is glad and grateful that she is okay. She's also happy that he is fine, but she looks a whole lot more nervous than anyone else in the room. He also notices that there's another girl in the room, the same girl in the wheelchair that he had saved from the Eva bird monster, and she introduces herself as Yunahi Senri, an A-ranker, and she thanks him for helping her that time. Our innocent MC is glad that she's okay too, and judging from her uniform, he deduces that she is from the same high school as well. Now taking a good look around, he realizes that everyone in the room is a top ranker except him, which is weird. Now that everyone is introduced and the situation has been thoroughly explained, Nisiki Ryogen decides to get to the main point while offering Kurobohi Gui some snacks that he made himself. Kurobohi Gui almost can't believe that such adorable-looking cookies were made by such a tough officer and proceeds to help himself to a good serving of them. Nisiki Ryogen then goes straight to the point and reveals that he is well aware that Kurobohi Gui devoured the strongest species and can now use its element, which makes him almost choke on his tea. Kurobohi Gui demands to know how he knows this and immediately suspects that Hyuga Orin told on him, but Nisiki Ryogen informs him that she actually didn't say anything and reveals that they had been monitoring him ever since, which makes Kurobohi Gui realize that he has been targeted from day one. The star element is a mysterious star element that was brought from space by the EVAs, and it's the source of their energy and, ironically, the origin of human alpha abilities as well. Human technology can't detect or measure it, and only top rankers can vaguely sense its presence, but Nisiki Ryogen reveals that Yunahi Senri's alpha is actually quite special and rare, because not only can she see elements, but she can also analyze them, which is how they kept tabs on Kurobohi Gui all this while. Kurobohi then connects the dots that helping the poor injured girl in a wheelchair wasn't just a coincidence, and they were actually testing him. But Nisiki Ryogen totally ignores his concerns and continues his story. He reveals that the greatest species that attacked 8 years ago appeared alone suddenly in the city and caused massive destruction and chaos, and it was therefore considered a threat equal to that of a nuclear warhead. Now the recent event, which has taken that name as the strongest species, is way too dangerous. Just then, he suddenly appears behind Kurobohi Gui with a blade to his throat, before the poor boy can even blink, and Nisiki Ryogen informs him that it is his duty as the country's greatest S-ranker to totally eliminate even the smallest chance of a threat. Kurobohi Gui still can't get around the fact that Nisiki was sitting down, having a nice cup of tea across from him just a minute ago, and now he is behind him and a mere gesture away from slicing his head clean off. Nisiki Ryogen continues to admit that he deeply regrets not being present when the strongest species attacked the school and not being able to protect the promising students, and with that pain, he swears to personally annihilate the strongest species, which is very bad news for Kurobohi Gui, who is technically one and the same with the strongest species. Just then, Hyuga Orin steps in to interrupt the principal and informs him that if another strongest species has appeared that also has a power level equal to that of a nuclear warhead, then there is a high possibility that many more EVAs just as strong or even stronger than it may appear. So she suggests that it would be wise to make someone who can use the power of the strongest species an ally instead, because that seems like humanity's best hope in this war. Kurobohi Gui is surprised that Hyuga Orin came to his defense like that, and after some consideration, the principal agrees with her and withdraws his sword, stating that a fight fire with fire approach might be the best chance they've got, and letting the strongest species fight on their side might not be the worst idea out there. But still, letting a 15-year-old play with buttons to a nuclear weapon is not happening. The principal decides that he has to get assessed thoroughly first and tells Yunahi Senri to properly examine the boy. She happily obliges and drives her wheelchair over to where Kurobohi Gui is sitting. Then she grabs his right arm, which startles him. As she observes closely, she can see the cutest, strongest species ever, and she notes that unlike the other day, its star element level is an absolute 0. She is absolutely in love with how cute it is, but the strongest species is terrified of the creepy human girl who won't leave him alone. She wonders how things ended up like this and concludes that she would need to take a closer look in order to understand. So she takes off her eye patch and reveals her right eye, which is much stronger than the left. And she believes that humans are the universe, so she is going to take a look and see what kind of universe our MC really is. Yunahi Senri believes that humans are the universe, So she pulls her face close to Kurobohi Gui's and gets all up in his personal space, so close that their foreheads touch, in order to discover what kind of universe he has within himself. And once she has him clearly in her sight, she uses her celestial observation to scan him thoroughly. She appears swimming in a sea of black and is having a blast, just sinking deeper and deeper into what she recognizes as inside Kurobohi Gui. And then she points out that the black space represents his body, while the twinkling stars represent the elements present. They said he didn't have alpha abilities, but he does have elements like everyone else, although she notices that they are significantly fewer than the others. Just then, the elements start moving in one direction, deep down in the space, and she realizes that they're being sucked in, not moving on their own. And as she looks closer and closer, she realizes that Kurobohi Gui's alpha ability is actually a black hole. Just then, she loses her free movement and the black hole starts sucking her in as well, so she tries desperately to escape, but there is nothing to grab onto. And she ends up being sucked in and popped out into another part of his body, the black hole. She finds herself in a pool of nothingness and realizes that she ended up getting sucked in after all, and then she feels the immense pressure caused by the gravity inside a black hole, and notes that if she was actually absorbed, she wouldn't be able to withstand the pressure and would be crushed in an instant. She discovers that this ability is no joke, as it far exceeds human limits, so she decides to uncover its true nature and dives further and further into the abyss until she spots a black sphere surrounded by colorful rings of aura that almost make it look like a mini planet. And upon closer inspection, she sees the strongest species in its true form, and once it notices her, it raises its guard and proceeds to attack her, possibly swallowing her whole, to the terror of the poor girl. Yunahi Senri immediately cancels the celestial observation in fear, and she looks traumatized by the entire experience and grateful to be alive. Hyuga Orin immediately rushes to her aid and informs her that she was screaming almost the whole time, while Kurobohi Gui looks fine and totally unaffected by anything, surprised even that the assessment is over so soon. The principal offers her some tea to relax, but Hyuga Orin suggests that what she needs right now is some water, so she is given just that, and she gobbles it down like she hasn't seen liquid in weeks. When she finishes the cup and regains some of her sanity, Nisiki Ryogen asks her for the results of her observation, so she reveals that Kurobohi Gui's alpha ability is actually a black hole. She continues to explain that while inside his body, she came across a large black hole that was absorbing everything, even his own element, which would explain why he was classified as having 0 elements, and that they can confirm that his claim of devouring the strongest species is actually the truth. She continues to reveal that she had seen the true form of the greatest species with her very own eyes when she was sucked into the black hole herself. The principal then asks her the state of the strongest species when she saw it, and she admits that it attacked her. With that response, Nisiki Ryogen immediately takes his former stance of putting his blade to Kurobohi Gui's neck just as quickly and suddenly as before, and Hyuga Orin tries to come to his defense like before, but the principal explains that what Yunahi Senri saw represents Kurobohi Gui's alpha ability and condition, and if the strongest species inside him attacked Yunahi Senri, then there is a significant possibility that it could break free of the alpha ability entirely and attack humanity, and he absolutely cannot allow that to happen, so he has to deal with it here and now. The strongest species informs Kurobohi Gui of the obvious fact that they're about to get slain by the hands of Nisiki Ryogen and immediately agrees to lend him its ability to take him down before he takes them out. Unfortunately, it forgot that Yunahi Senri can totally hear and see him, and she immediately rats them out and exposes its plan to lend Kurobohi Gui its power to eliminate the principal. She explains that the ghost thingy is most likely the soul of the strongest species, and when Kurobohi Gui absorbed it back then, the process separated the body and the soul, with the body going into the black hole and the soul released outside, neutralizing it and sealing it. Despite the strongest species being sealed, Nisiki Ryogen still believes that if the soul tempts the boy to use its power, then the danger increases further, only proving his point even more, and he has decided that they just can't take such a risk, and such power must not exist. Tired of all the old man's yapping, Kurobohi Gui grabs the sharp blade with his bare hands and reminds them all about the fact that he has always lived without an alpha ability, so he is very confident in his ability to resist being tempted by a dumb soul. Unfortunately, mere words are not enough to convince the principal, so he whips his sword around to forcefully free it from Kurobohi Gui's grasp, then lands a close-range slice attack, cutting down Kurobohi Gui. This greatly pisses the strongest species off, and so it charges Kurobohi-gui with a whole lot of energy that makes him explode with power, and Yunahi Senri informs the principal that S-rank and higher-level elements are swelling up from Gui's body, so Nisiki Ryogen powers up as well and finally acknowledges that Kurobohi-gui is, in fact, now the strongest species, and sets his sights on eliminating him. Meanwhile, Kurobohi-gui is glowing like he is in the avatar state. Kurobohi-gui is now overflowing with power, and Nisiki Ryogen, the principal and the strongest ranked soldier in the country, classifies him as the strongest species itself and proceeds to eliminate him like he should have the last time it attacked the school. Yunahi Senri detects that the strongest species star element levels within Kurobohi-gui are rapidly increasing, and at this rate, the strongest species inside his body will be released any moment now, but the principal assures them that everything is under control and he will not allow that to happen. He leaps into action to attack Kurobohi-gui once more and comes down with a slice attack that creates a huge impact, and Yunahi Senri recognizes the move as the sword strike that is enhanced and released with the star element, but she can predict that it won't be enough to stop the raging beast in Kurobohi-gui, and Nisiki Ryogen is shocked to see that after all that display of power, it has absolutely no effect on our MC whatsoever. The burst of power is only increasing at this point, and the principal has to admit that the amount of star element present is incredible, so much so that even he can perceive it clearly. In that case, he decides to try to overwhelm it with the sheer quantity and quality of his attacks, landing numerous simultaneous attacks at once, but even after all those flashy moves, Kurobohi-gui still receives no damage, and his star element release rate doesn't decline one bit. This shocks Nisiki Ryogen, as well as it shocks Yuga Orin, who feels like she needs to do something to help the principal, but then she remembers all the kind things that Kurobohi-gui has done for her from the moment they met and how he saved her, and that makes her hesitate. Just then, an unconscious Kurobohi-gui stretches out his right arm to reveal the strongest species soul with a sinister grin, and it expresses its disappointment to find out that this is the most harm that the so-called humanity's strongest ranked soldier can do. The principal gladly accepts the challenge and then steps up to use his most powerful attack. He raises his sword and begins building up star elements and shaping them into a powerful weapon, turning it into a super tornado of power, and the strongest species realizes that things are finally about to get interesting around here. Yunahi Senri can feel all the star elements in this space being gathered into the principal's sword, and she fears what is going to happen next. It is now the strongest species' mighty power versus the star element power that the principal had created, and Hyuga Orin desperately calls out to Kurobohi-gui, trying to wake him up, reminding him of how he claimed to be able to resist the temptations of the strongest species. But our MC is totally unresponsive and is just busy chilling in the avatar state while the strongest species takes the wheel. The strongest species then shoots out of his arm in its true form and comes out to play a little with the principal, and the principal uses the full force of the star element power he had gathered to counterattack. So the two mighty opposing powers collide, and the impact is intense. So intense that Hyuga Orin has to use her S-rank ability to create an ice shield and protect herself and Yunahi Senri from the sheer force of the impact. Then half of a blade flies through the air, half of Nisiki Ryogen's blade, because the strongest species elements chopped it off, and he is shocked by this as he realizes what deep trouble he is now in. That minor squabble was fun, but the strongest species decides that it is about time he gets this over with, and proceeds to make a good snack out of the principal, as it has worked up quite the appetite being stuck in Kurobohi-gui's body all this while, and things are looking really dire for the principal. But then something else totally unexpected happens. After the smoke clears, Nisiki Ryogen sees that the strongest species has been blown upward and is now stuck to the ceiling, and it wonders why everywhere is so dark, because it is not even aware of what just happened. Turns out that Kurobohi-gui grabbed a hold of the beast just in time and flung it upwards toward the ceiling, and he is obviously done taking a nap. The principal hesitates a bit before he asks him if it is actually Kurobohi-gui or the strongest species talking, so Kurobohi-gui reminds him of his claim to have the ability to resist the temptations of that dumb ghost. With a confident smile, he reveals that he is the one and only Kurobohi-gui and explains that it was because the principal knocked him out with that first attack, which is what allowed the strongest species to take control. And it took him a while, but he is finally in the driver's seat once more, and the principal is left speechless. After obviously proving that he is the real deal and explaining why the strongest species was able to take over his body, Kurobohi-gui then proceeds to drag the strongest species from the ceiling and scolds it for attacking people again, then threatens to devour it a second time, and to the strongest species ghost. This is one heck of a terrifying strength, because it can see nothing but pure darkness in the boy's eyes, filled with pure terror. And then it remembers the terror from the last time it was eaten whole from the inside out by this same kid. So it immediately starts apologizing and promises to go back and never try such terrible things ever again. It does like it promised, and returns to the mark on Kurobo Higui's palm, and he is secretly relieved that it went back on its own. Because apart from all that big talk he just threatened it with, he actually doesn't know how to use his so-called alpha ability called Black Hole. Yunahi Senri cannot detect any star element from Kurobo Higui anymore, and officially announces that he has reverted back to being a plain old unranked nobody again. The principal grins, then lets out a big laugh, impressed with Kurobo Higui's reaction to the situation. From a critical unconscious state to releasing the strongest species, and yet he didn't once harm anybody and successfully sealed the strongest species back inside his body. The principal is impressed with how he passed the test with flying colors. Then he extends his arm and officially offers him a special admission into the school as the principal. Kurobo Higui still can't wrap his head around what is actually going on and begs for an explanation. So the principal reveals that this was actually all a test. In truth, the principal informs him that if there's a possibility that the strongest species will invade again in the future, humanity will also want a power equal to the strongest species to give them a fighting chance. But he has to make sure that that power could be safely kept under their control, which is why they had to test him to see if he could dominate the strongest species and prove to them that he can get back in control. First it was at the hospital, and now this, and our MC is really getting sick of being tested left and right without his permission. Then there's this very random admission into the Hachi High School. For someone like him, who has no abilities whatsoever, to attend a school that was designed for only top rankers to get into, is really starting to look like another test again. The principal then asks him if he wants to decline, but that is far from it. In fact, Kurobo Higui is more fired up than ever to do what he can to help the people around him, and if that entails enrolling in a top high school such as Hachi, then so be it. Even though he doesn't have abilities, he swears to do what he can to help the students, even if it's to keep cleaning like he was doing before, and if he ever regains his power back, he will still do what he can to help people. The principal is liking his attitude and officially welcomes him into the school, then proceeds to treat his wounds with his alpha ability, apologizing for hurting him earlier. But to his shock, he discovers that deep blade wounds have almost completely healed, and treatment would not be necessary after all. This reminds the principal that Kurobo Higui's body is made of the flesh of the strongest species, making it quite the dangerous specimen. He then calls Hyuga Orion and puts her in charge of taking care of him in all ways necessary, a role she wholeheartedly accepts. He then orders Yunahi Senri to change class and observe Kurobo Higui as well, and this assignment pleases her to a very unhealthy degree. She admits that the strongest species surprised her earlier, but she swears never to take her eye off him this time, and the poor EVA ghost isn't really a fan of being watched by the creepy human girl. While they chit-chat, the principal pulls Hyuga Orion aside and tells her that things are about to get interesting, which she agrees to. He then whips out a flask bottle from his bag and pours out some tea, asking Hyuga Orion if she would like some. But she politely declines, shocked that he always carries tea on him at all times like he can't get enough of it. Principal Tea Lover helps himself to a good cup before he orders Hyuga Orion to use her ability and take out Kurobo Higui together with the strongest species if it should ever show signs of going berserk again. She is shocked by this order, but he isn't joking and informs her that he will be here to handle it when he can. But since he is often absent dealing with S-rank or higher EVAs, the responsibility may fall to her shoulders. But Hyuga Orion isn't really feeling the vibe. Neither is she the most confident that she would be able to handle it, especially after how totally useless her ice ability has been so far. Nisiki Ryogen is aware of this, but he reminds her that she still has another attack which she hasn't tried yet, the Ice Star Euphoria, and confirms that she should be able to handle Kurobo Higui before the strongest species is released. He then reveals to her that he knows that she could have used it earlier during the battle, but she still isn't feeling too sure about this, so he reminds her that she doesn't have the right to refuse, because it is her duty as one of the only 10 S-rankers in this country to protect humanity at all costs. She takes a glance at her so-called potential target and sees Kurobo Higui innocently chatting with the purest of intent, and then she remembers when he gave her a free piggyback ride to save her life while risking his own. Then, after some hesitation, she finally agrees to the principal's orders and swears to take responsibility for eliminating Kurobo Higui if the strongest species should ever go berserk, not just because of her duty as an S-ranker, but also as her way of repaying him for saving her life the day the strongest species showed up. and the principal is satisfied with that motivation. After that, the principal calls Kurobohigui's attention and releases some amount of star element from his hand, then asks him if he can sense it, but Kurobohigui admits that he can't sense anything at all. With that, the principal gives the girls another mission before Kurobohigui can start school, to teach him about star elements, since it is obvious that even though he can suppress the strongest species, he still knows nothing about star elements, which are the basics of alpha abilities. He makes it an order that the mission must be a success, as it can very well affect humanity's survival, so they must succeed. The very next day, Kurobohigui approaches the special training ground that Hyuga Orion had directed them to, looking all refreshed and ready to rumble after the life-changing events of yesterday, and he has followed the directions that Hyuga Orion gave him to the letter, so he is shocked to be standing in front of the entrance to a freaking hot springs. Kurobohigui can't believe that the special training ground that Hyuga Orion gave him directions to is actually some hot springs, and he has to go back and look for his map just to be sure that he didn't come to the wrong place. Just then, the girls arrive and apologize for keeping him waiting, so he looks up to see Hyuga Orion and Yunahi Senri welcoming him to the 8th Special Forces Training Facility Hot Springs, looking steaming fresh from a hot bath. Kurobohigui is shocked to see that they had already gone ahead and taken a bath and asks about the actual training, but Hyuga Orion informs him that this is part of the special training and starts pouting because he is making it sound like they're just playing around, and Kurobohigui just can't wrap his head around how steamy they look. Kurobohigui notices that Yunahi Senri doesn't need a wheelchair to move around anymore, and that her legs look stronger than ever now, and she happily reveals that it is the principal who is actually responsible, as he healed her with his alpha ability, but it was just a fracture, so it was no biggie and healed almost instantly. Kurobohigui is once again taken aback by how amazing alpha abilities can be, and he heeds the strongest species' soul in his hand, and is more fired up than ever to master his as quickly as possible. Yunahi Senri rides on his energy and proceeds to get started investigating his alpha ability for that purpose, or at least that's what she claims, because it is quite obvious that she is just unhealthily obsessed with stalking the poor strongest species' soul. Immediately, the ghost senses the perverted eye-patch human girl approach it. It runs to go hide in the safety of the precious black hole on Kurobohigui's palm, and that's a bummer, but she is more interested in the hole this time anyway, and she makes it sound so inappropriate. She then proceeds to examine Kurobohigui with the most perverted face ever, and he starts to question what she actually wants to do. She takes her fingers and plays a little before she sticks them in, with such a zesty expression on her face making the whole situation way more inappropriate than it already is, and Kurobohigui feels violated and ticklish. She starts making it even weirder and suggests that Hyuga Orion give it a try as well, and Kurobohigui doesn't like the idea of his body being used like some sort of toy, but then Hyuga Orion actually wants to give it a try too and starts acting inappropriate, which shocks and frightens Kurobohigui a lot. Just then, the strongest species finds Yunahi Senri's fingers in the black hole and bites them out of annoyance, chasing her away and warning her not to do such gross things in its home. She is bummed that the cute ghost got angry and cut her playtime short, but the time she spent in there is enough as she has already confirmed her hypothesis. She then asks our MC if he felt anything when she put her fingers in the black hole, and he admits that he didn't except for a little tickle. Just like she thought, it is really bad, and she predicts that at this rate Kurobohigui might never be able to use an alpha ability ever. This terrible news shocks him and he is disheartened, but the strongest species ghost plushie is over there giggling as it believes that this is a good thing. He doesn't understand what she means by this, so Yunahi Senri explains further, revealing that when she put her fingers in, she was actually releasing star elements, and the fact that he wasn't able to feel any at all is a very critical sign, just like the principal deduced the day before. It is now that he asks her what these star elements are in the first place and the difference between them and the actual alpha abilities. Hyuga Orion explains that star elements are basically the building blocks in the form of energy needed to use alpha abilities like her ice powers or flame skills, so basically they are like fuel to power these superhuman gifts. The star elements are cosmic matter that the alien life forms known as the EVAs brought with them when they invaded Earth, and now they are spread all over the planet and are everywhere around them, from the trees to the birds of the sky. They exist abundantly in the bodies of living organisms just as much. She continues to explain that humans take in these star elements through eating and breathing, and they are constantly radiating tiny amounts of star elements from the entire body. As they walk into the hot spring building, Yunahi Senri notes that the major problem that Kurobohigui has is that he can't feel them. In other words, he is incapable of recognizing these star elements, which are the fuels, and therefore cannot use his ability. Kurobohigui is in quite the bind in this situation, but once again the strongest species is glad at the news and happy to see the boy suffer. But to its irritation, Kurobohigui is not disheartened at all, and is as optimistic as ever. After all, he still has his female friends to train him to be worth something. Speaking of training, Yunahi Senri suggests that they start with trying to teach him how to sense star elements, and Kurobohigui is surprised to see her scoop some hot water from the hot spring source. Then she hands it over to Hyuga Orion, who immediately gets to work, concentrating on the liquid like she's trying to make a witch potion. But in reality, she is actually filling it up with tons of star elements from her body. And when she is done, even Yunahi Senri is surprised at how concentrated the water turned out to be. Neither Kurobohigui nor the greatest species have any idea what they're trying to do here, so Hyuga Orion explains that she just infused a large amount of star elements into the hot water from the hot spring source, and if he should drink it, then he should be able to sense the star elements. Yunahi Senri urges him to drink it, but of course she finds a way to drive it way out of context and make it inappropriate, making everyone uncomfortable. She also adds that the hot springs around here are already naturally rich in dissolved elements, and she just added more to make them extra concentrated and easier to detect. If it's going to help him sense star elements, then Kurobohigui is ready to do anything, so just drinking a cup of water is a piece of cake for him. But the girls have this sinister look on their faces, like there is something vital that they are purposefully keeping from him. He doesn't suspect a thing, though, and happily gobbles down the liquid. But then it hits him, and he drops the cup, because suddenly his throat feels like it's on fire, and he can't breathe properly. It is now that Yunahi Senri finds it fit to warn him that the concentrated star elements can be very poisonous to some people. With the most mischievous grin, and Kurobohigui would have appreciated that information way more if she had told him before he chugged down an entire cup like it's orange juice. But she reminds him of the fact that he is transferring to Hachi High School starting tomorrow, which means he is going to have to learn how to handle at least this much of the star elements or it won't work. She also adds that all Hachi High School students go through this hot springs training to increase their capacity by taking in concentrated star elements. Kurobohigui admits that it was a sucker punch straight to the gut, but he is still far from giving up, and he is determined to clear this hurdle with a smile and enter that school to help everyone. The girls are liking the motivation, but it really doesn't make the process any easier or less painful. And then, when he can't take it anymore, he explodes with energy, and then he realizes that he can feel a power coursing through every part of his body, and that power is none other than star elements. Kurobohigui recognizes the power now coursing through him as the star element that everyone has been talking about and the girls being it, and they are excited that he is finally feeling it. He feels it everywhere, in the air, on the earth, and suddenly he realizes that he had no idea there was this abundance all around him. He can sense it from the hot water and even the trees, and Hyuga Orion reminds him that nature contains a lot of star elements, but this hot spring in particular packs a whole lot, which is why it is used as the Hatch School's special training grounds. Just then, the feeling of the star elements disappears just as suddenly as it appeared. Yunahi Senri takes a closer look at him and is disappointed that it ended up just like she predicted it would. He is totally lost, so she reveals to him that when she accessed him with the principal before, she saw all the star elements in his body being sucked into a black hole. So in other words, he cannot hold star elements in his body because his own alpha ability, black hole, will just absorb them like a bucket with a huge hole at the bottom, so the star elements will never stay in his body, translating to him being unable to use alpha abilities to the greatest species' delight. After some deliberation on the matter, Hyuga Orion has an idea and suggests that they get into the hot springs bath since the water is full of star elements, so maybe bathing in it might change something. Yunahi Senri of course loves the idea and seconds it, but Kurobohigui still has many concerns about when his actual training would start, so she reveals to him that concentrating on his body is part of training, and Hyuga Orion tells him to face the star elements while soaking in the hot water. Kurobohigui believes that they cannot possibly be serious, but they sure as hell are, because the next minute he is sitting alone with his EVA ghost in the men's bath, just hoping that the girls know what they are doing and did not just want to get into the hot springs. The strongest species is enjoying itself, taking in the star elements in the water, and then proceeds to mock Kurobohigui for not having talent. Even with all this overflowing natural star elements and the perfect environment where one can use alpha abilities all he wants, the dissing pisses him off, So he reminds the greatest species' soul, who is the boss in their relationship, with a knock to its head, and tells him not to distract him when he is trying to be serious. Although deep down he knows that there is some truth in what the ghost is saying, because even though there are so many star elements in the water, he still can't do squat. Just then he realizes that he is getting discouraged and he cannot have that. So he splashes some water on his face and gains his confidence back, because he may not have alpha abilities, but one thing he does have is his resilience, and he cannot lose that too. Meanwhile, at the women's bath, the girls wash themselves, and Yunahi Senri starts to worry about Kurobohi Gui's progress and how he would fit in school, because even though he can sense star elements now for some time at least, he still cannot use any alpha ability, and that is a big problem. But Hyuga Orin reminds her that alpha abilities depend heavily on individual perception, so Kurobohi Gui needs to do this part of the training alone. She agrees with her, knowing that everyone has their own ways of using star elements and they are vastly different. So if she just taught him her own way, it would be equal to pouring water on a rock. They decide to believe in Kurobohi Gui together and pray that he figures something out before it is too late. But the boy in question is having difficulty accomplishing that particular task, as he realizes that just chugging down cups of star element, concentrated hot springs water, is not working for him anymore. He is now starting to get dizzy from sitting too long in hot water, as he had never been good with hot water. But just then, he notices that the amount of star element in the water has significantly decreased. Then he realizes that his apex predator black hole ability is absorbing all the star elements in the water, and it shocks him. The black hole on his palm is draining the water like crazy, and he has no idea how to handle this ability, an ability that is supposed to be his, but he has no control over whatsoever. The system then activates and informs him that the star element accumulation has exceeded the amount necessary for sealing the strongest species, and he is shocked and wonders if this is the same system that appeared when he took care of that bird Eva back at the hospital. The system then requests his permission to use a new skill, Star Element Jet, which is suddenly now available, and with absolutely no idea what he is doing, he grants his permission to use this mysterious new skill. The impact sound alone is loud enough to startle the girls all the way in the women's bath. And when they look up, they see a bright light coming from the men's bath where they left Kurobohi Gui to soak, like a piercing sword shooting straight into the sky. They immediately rush over there to check it out, fearing that something terrible might have happened to their boy. They arrive at the scene to find Kurobohi Gui clothless, but perfectly fine, and he apologizes for startling them, then explains to them how he was in the bath when a window appeared asking him for permission to use an alpha ability. And of course, he went ahead and agreed to it without checking first what it would do or how it would react. This new development shocks the girls and completely leaves them stunned, so much so that they forget that Kurobohi Gui is not putting on any clothes at all.